Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Reverend Jesse Jackson, the civil rights leader and two-time presidential candidate, has died at his home in Chicago at the age of 84. He was a member of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s inner circle, marching alongside him for civil rights. He was with Dr. King when he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968. Reverend Jackson became the founder and president of Rainbow Push Coalition in Chicago, the first African-American to greet South African President Nelson Mandela when he came out of jail in 1990. This is Reverend Jesse Jackson on Democracy Now! Back in 2017, shortly after President Trump took office for the first time, he spoke about expanding the constitutional right to vote.
When we got the right to vote in 1965, blacks couldn't vote, white women couldn't serve on juries in the South, 18-year-olds couldn't vote, you couldn't vote bilingually, you could not vote bilingually. But we were able to challenge that and get proportional representation and democratize democracy.
After headlines, we'll hear from Jesse Jackson in his own words on his past appearances in Democracy Now!, and we'll speak with those who knew him well. A second round of indirect talks between the Trump administration and Iranian officials is underway in Geneva, Switzerland. Ahead of the talks, Iran's foreign ministry said it's willing to discuss limits to its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, adding Iran will not accept zero uranium enrichment. On Monday, Iran's military staged war games in the Strait of Hormuz as the U.S. Navy steamed a second aircraft carrier strike group toward the Arabian Sea. The USS Gerald Ford is the largest Air Force carrier. It was off the coast of Venezuela when the U.S. abducted the Venezuelan president and his wife. U.S. officials said Friday Trump is considering an attack on Iran that could last for weeks. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been pushing for the U.S. to topple Iran's government, was in Tel Aviv Monday. A visit, he said, was to reassure the Israeli people that there's no gap between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Iran policy.
There are two lines in the water right now. One's a diplomatic line, trying to find a way to end this regime diplomatically that will advance our national security interest. The other line is the military option. I think President Trump is looking for which line can catch the biggest fish. The bottom line is we're into weeks, not months, in terms of decision making.
Ukrainian and Russian officials are also meeting in Geneva, Switzerland today for U.S.-brokered peace talks, just days ahead of the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia is demanding Ukraine give up 20% of the eastern region of Donetsk, which Ukraine refuses to do. Ahead of the talks, U.S. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Sheldon Whitehouse traveled to Kyiv to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky and vowed to pass a bill aimed at Russia. Senator Blumenthal also said the U.S. should supply Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles and that the Pentagon should help guarantee Ukraine's security under any deal to end Russia's war.
There have to be ironclad, airtight security guarantees as the linchpin for peace. Ukraine needs and deserves a guarantee from the United States, not just European powers, that it will be actively engaged if Russia again attacks.
In Gaza, a senior Hamas leader involved in the ceasefire negotiations tells DropSite News Hamas will not agree to demands that it unilaterally disarm. Bassem Naim also said Hamas will not submit to Israel's demand for a total demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. This comes amidst reports that President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed back in December that Hamas would be given a 2-month deadline to disarm. On Monday, the Hind Rajab Foundation said it's filed a criminal complaint in Chile seeking the prosecution of Ram Kovtun, an Israel Defense Forces sniper accused of taking part in the deadly 2024 siege of the Al-Shifa hospital. The World Health Organization reports at least 21 patients were killed during the attacks on the hospital. Meanwhile, the head of the United Nations Development Program is demanding greater access to Gaza to expand aid and recovery efforts. Administrator Alexander de Croo spoke from Gaza City.
More than 300,000 families in Gaza are looking for housing. Only 10% of people today living in Gaza have housing which has the basic accommodation. So 90% of the population is today looking for housing. You have seen in which very difficult circumstances people have to live or have to survive.
President Trump called Cuba a failed nation Monday and refused to rule out military action aimed at toppling the Cuban government. Trump spoke to reporters aboard Air Force One.
And they should absolutely make a deal because it's really a humanitarian threat. We'll see how it all turns out, but Cuba and us, we are talking. In the meantime, there's an embargo, there's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything.
Cuba's deputy foreign minister responded to Trump's remarks, writing, quote, "It's frequent for U.S. officials and diplomats to claim U.S. aggression is not responsible for difficulties in Cuba. It seems they don't listen to their president," unquote. The Trump administration's blockade of fuel has triggered a severe humanitarian and economic crisis in Cuba, compounding the impact of the U.S. economic embargo that's been in place since 1962. On Monday, Spain's foreign ministry said it would use United Nations channels to send humanitarian aid to Cuba. The announcement came a day after activists rallied outside the Cuban embassy in Mexico City, expressing solidarity with the Cuban people while protesting the U.S. blockade.
Faced with this attack that aims to leave Cuba without energy for hospitals, without fuel for its ambulances, without resources to bring food to the family table, solidarity between peoples is emerging today as the most powerful antidote against the blockade. Because while the United States government imposes sanctions and punishment, dignified governments and peoples, like Mexico's, respond with brotherhood.
Minnesota's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension said Monday the FBI's formally notified investigators their agency will not receive access to evidence in the killing of Alex Preti. Preti was shot to death in Minneapolis January 24th by Border Patrol agent Jesus Ochoa and Customs and Border Protection officer Raimundo Gutierrez, who fired 10 rounds in under 5 seconds. 6 of the bullets were fired as Preti lay motionless on the ground. The FBI previously refused to share information about the shooting of Venezuelan immigrant Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, who was shot in the leg by ICE agents who then lied about the circumstances of the shooting, and Renee Nicole Macklin-Good, who was fatally shot by a Border Patrol officer on January 7th. Democratic Governor Tim Walz blasted the FBI's withholding of evidence, writing, quote, "Minnesota needs impartial investigations into the shootings of American citizens on our streets. Trump's left hand cannot investigate his right hand. The families of the deceased deserve better," unquote. And on Capitol Hill, Attorney General Pam Bondi is facing bipartisan criticism after she told Congress all documents related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been released. That's despite the fact the Justice Department still holds almost 3 million pages. On Sunday, Republican Congressmember Tom Massey of Kentucky, who co-authored the Epstein Files Transparency Act, told ABC News more files should be released and unredacted. Massey said he no longer has confidence in Bondi as Attorney General and responded to President Trump's personal attacks.
Donald Trump told us that even though, he had dinner with these kinds of people in New York City and West Palm Beach, that he would be transparent, but he's not. He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration, and they're attacking me for trying to get these files released.
On Monday, Thomas Pritzker resigned from his position as executive chair of the Hyatt Hotels Corporation, citing his links to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The release of the Epstein files revealed Pritzker had been in regular contact with Epstein after his 2008 plea deal on sex crimes charges. In Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass Monday called for Casey Wasserman to step down as chairman of Los Angeles' 2028 Olympic Games over revelations about his ties to Epstein and Maxwell. In France, police have been searching the Arab World Institute as part of an investigation into links between its former president, Jack Lang, and Epstein. Meanwhile, Columbia University said it's cutting all ties with 2 faculty members in its dental college after the Epstein files revealed they had used an irregular process to help a girlfriend of Epstein gain admission. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.